Hello artists, and welcome back to the Artrageous Art Studio. Today we are going to be covering part 2 of our hand drawing study. And this lesson is really focusing on drawing. And in the first video, if you haven't seen it, we covered some of the awesome information from the drawing on the right side of your brain workbook. So there is a book that I highly recommend, and this workbook which will literally blow your mind. So the basic summary is that it is not your fault if you have been frustrated by not being able to draw what you really see. It's actually the left side of your brain that has been using symbols to understand the world around you. So in the first video, we did our first sketch, which only took 5 minutes. And we learned that by using blind contour drawing, we could actually trick the left side of your brain into going to sleep and allowing your right side of your brain to really focus on the lines and the things that you see. The blind contour drawing is just meant to be a sketch. Obviously, it's not meant to look realistic. It's an exercise to get you warmed up and ready to draw. Today, for part 2, we are going to be learning how to draw a foreshortened hand. So all of these exercises focus on helping us understand the 5 perceptual skills needed for drawing. Those 5 skills, number 1, are that we understand the edges of an object or the contour. So the blind contour drawing really helps you understand the edge or the parts of your hand that we're going to be drawing. The second skill is understanding the negative space, or the spaces around the hand. We're going to be using that today with our foreshortened hand drawing. And then of course we want to understand relationships, which means proportion, so the sizes of the parts of your hand. And then we're really going to focus on the values that we see. So the lights and the shadows, we're going to really be working with those today. So the materials you're going to need to get started are probably things that you already have, especially if you already have a sketchbook. But one thing that you may not have that came with this book, and there's some different ways to make them, but it is a viewfinder. So one of the really awesome things that I love about this book is that it came with its own transparency viewfinder. Now, you could buy these. They're a little bit pricey if you ask me. There are some different ways that you can actually make your own. So if you have some of these plastic sheets, these are really super cheap. You could make a cardboard frame and just use one of the page protector sheets, or you could even use a glass, so a piece of glass from a picture frame or something like that that fits the size of your paper. You could definitely use that today. So let's grab our viewfinders, get those ready. We're going to be using pencil, eraser, and our sketchbooks today. So let's get our materials and let's get started. So if you're going to create your own viewfinder, you want to set up a grid on your viewfinder, just a really simple grid that just divides the space into 4 equal parts. So I used a ruler for that and a Sharpie, and you can draw that grid onto the plastic or on the glass. Now you're going to choose a pose for your fingers that shows a foreshortened view of your hand. This just basically means that your fingers are either bent or folded in a way that they're projecting out into space. So I just chose a simple peace sign. You could do sign language or really any type of pose that you want. Now you're going to take your dry erase marker and carefully trace the edges of your fingers and hand as you see them on the picture plane. You can even close one eye to help flatten the surface so that you're not trying to draw things that you don't see. Once you have traced all the edges of your fingers and hand, then you're ready to get your sketch paper and your pencil and start creating the background or the ground of your drawing surface. To do this, I laid my viewfinder on top of my drawing paper, and I used my pencil to mark the edges. Once I did that, I used my ruler to set up the same grid that was on my viewfinder as I did on my paper. Once I did that, then I cleaned up the edges and I took my pencil and I shaded all the corners of my grid. Now I am using a very soft graphite pencil that really helps to smooth out the surface. Once you've done that, then you're going to rub the surface with a paper towel to blend and soften the pencil marks. Now it's time to use the grid and transfer what you drew on your viewfinder onto your drawing paper. You really want to use the grid to pay attention to the relationships between the negative space around your hands. Look for those shapes, and you also want to use the edges and the proportions of what you see on your transparency. Once you've finished drawing all the contour lines, then it's time to start looking at the shading. So you want to look at where the shadows are, the highlights, the values, and I like to start darkening up all of the dark areas first using my pencil. And then you can go in with your eraser, and you can also use a blending stump to help you blend the shadows and the highlights, creating a very, very rich illusion of space and depth. Now, I could keep going back and adding more and more shadows and highlights, but I really like how my final foreshortened hand drawing turned out. I hope that you enjoyed this lesson and that you're very pleased with the results of your hand drawing. And our final hand assignment is going to be the best. This one you can get really creative, use your imagination, color, and any materials you like. So stay tuned for that one, and I can't wait to see how awesome they turn out.